It's setting up to be a busy week for the Toronto Maple Leafs with the draft and free agency. Hey everyone, welcome into another Sun Sports Roundtable. Rob Wong joined alongside by Toronto Sun Sports columnist Steve Simmons and Toronto Sun Maple Leafs writer Terry Koshan. And guys, it is one of the busiest times of the NHL calendar. The draft going in Nashville on Wednesday and free agency kicking off on Saturday. It could be quite a busy next few days for the Leafs. Steve, you tweeted on Friday that we should get some clarity on Sheldon Keefe pretty soon. What can we expect from Brad Treliving and company this week?
Well, so far, Brad Treliving has been quite quiet. He's been behind the scenes. He's been doing the work he's need to do to prepare for his staff preparing for the draft. He's not allowed to be there. I suspect they're going to confirm Sheldon Keefe as coach, maybe today, maybe tomorrow in that circumstance. And I suspect then you're going to see maybe some trading, maybe some moving of bodies, maybe some sense of what stamp he wants to put on this roster to make this team his, because the team he's inheriting is not his, and every general manager has his own view and his own eyes and his own opinion, and I think we're going to soon find out what Brad Treliving's thoughts are.
Yeah, I'm with Steve on that. I guess the big thing for me this week is I'm curious to see how big this stamp is, because if the core four comes back, there's not much stamp left for everybody else, if you know what I mean. It just, what's he going to do here unless he pulls off another sort of trade of consequence, which I guess would be moving out a defenseman and getting another one in. But, when at least for another year, when the Leafs have these cap restrictions that they're going to have, and the core four, we're led to believe, will return, I'm curious to see how he does things. And, as far as free agency goes starting Saturday, there's been all this talk about the door not closed on Ryan O'Reilly and Michael Bunting. Well, the fact of the matter is the Leafs don't have the money to pay them. So we really don't need anybody from the team side or agents to say, yeah, we're moving on, because it seems pretty obvious that'll happen in both cases, unless money is suddenly freed up somewhere. So right now the Leafs have $9 million. They get another $5 million. You put Jake Muzzin on LTIR, which still only gets you to 14 plus, and you've got to fill out the bottom half of your forward roster and look at the goaltending. Ilya Samsonov needs to be paid. So I think there's a lot potential for a lot to happen this week, but the size of these things, I don't think we're going to get too big unless there's a change in philosophy and he finds out from one of Matthews and Nylander that neither wants to return, which no one is expecting, and then you go from there. But like I say, I'm curious to see how big this gets.
Wayne Gretzky was traded twice. After him, everybody else can be traded as far as I'm concerned. Management can say this, management can tell players, you can tell anybody anything you want. When the phone call comes in and someone wants that player and you can make a deal that you think improves your hockey team, for example, all that turmoil in Calgary right now, if Elias Lindholm is suddenly available, and you can move William Nylander maybe and something for him, and you can make that kind of a deal. I think if you're Brad Treliving, you have to look very seriously at that kind of move and see if that kind of thing can't happen. I'm just using that as one example. I don't know how many others are out there. I don't know how many people are calling him and making proposals. So I don't buy this everybody's coming back, let's hold hands and sing Kumbaya stuff. I think Treliving is there to make this team better and to make this team his, and if that means moving one of the top four guys, that means moving one of the top four guys.
I'm with you on that. I just think that, I don't think anybody's been promised anything, but I think there'd be a little more openness about the fact that they're exploring everything. The fact is, Steve, I like that Lindholm idea. Still not improving your blue line, and that's what he needs to do.
I think he needs to do lots of things, but that improves.
That's got to be his priority.
Yeah.
Well, when you look at the team like Calgary, Terry, or the Winnipeg Jets, a couple of teams with for sale signs at this point, out of those two, who do you think does make the more attractive trade partner if the Leafs were potentially to go down that route?
Well, like Steve has said, the Lindholm, I think the Flames do. Treliving knows them. And they probably have pieces that are a little more attractive. And I'm talking about Elias Lindholm, which is a move that I would make for sure. And on the blue line, we know that Noah Hanifin is available as well, and I think he's a guy that could come in and help Toronto years after they didn't draft him and took Mitch Marner instead, which was fine and remains so to this day. But I would think it would be the Flames in that regard. because, like I say, Treliving does know those players better than anybody else. But we'll have to see. I would think that one thing we've kind of learned, Steve, and as we know from the past about Treliving, is that he likes to cast his line into a lot of water, if you will, and it's not going to be limited to just what the Calgary Flames may or may not have available.
Yeah, and the Winnipeg Jets, it looks like they're going to have a deal between the Los Angeles Kings for Pierre-Luc Dubois. So they're, one of their top forwards is going to Los Angeles, and I'm not sure what in exchange for what yet. But I don't see where, I don't think the Leafs have a need for a Connor Hellebuck, for example, if he's being dealt, or a Scheifele if he's being dealt. Those are players who might be attractive to other teams. So the matches on the Winnipeg Jets aren't necessarily the matches that the Leafs have. And if you look and you think, okay, who's a defenseman that could really help the Leafs? Well, Morrissey obviously could. He can help anybody. But he's not going to be available, and you're not going to be able to make it that kind of a deal. So you move on from Winnipeg and think, okay, let's look at other teams and other places. And as Terry points out, the one thing about Brad Treliving that is different from I've been told about compared to Kyle Dubas is Treliving talks to everybody all the time. Like he is looking to make deals. He doesn't make them all the time. Nobody does, but he's looking to make them all the time, and he's looking to improve his hockey team all the time. And he's far more aggressive in terms of how he goes out and talks to people than Dubas was. Dubas was, I would say, more purposeful than Treliving in that regard.
One thing I'd add quickly, too, about trades, I'm curious to see what the Leafs do with this first-round pick at 28 overall. Is that pick used in a package to try to improve the team now? Because that player won't get anywhere near the Leafs for 2 or 3 years in all likelihood, and the Leafs need to win now, period.
Yeah, and at the same time, they have to do something with Matt Murray.
Yep.
They have to move that money in some way. And, I suspect in some kind of one of those phony deals to some club that isn't going to go near the cap and won't have to spend to the cap, and that way it's the old burying them on Robidas Island kind of deal, and I suspect that's what will happen with Murray. But they have to do that because, as Terry points out, there's no money, and if you don't have Jake Muzzin on long-term injury and you don't have Murray out of the picture, then they're it's like lunch money for us is all that's left for the Leafs to spend.
Yep, lots of speculation at this point. We'll see if anything comes to fruition this week for the Leafs. As always, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. For Steve Simmons and Terry Koshan, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time on another Sun Sports Roundtable.